This morning at 4:12, the world woke up to a reality very different from the one we knew. The United States called it epic fury, Israel named it roaring lion, but the smoke rising over Tehran skies screams one undeniable truth: in the Middle East, that irreversible, blood-drawn line has finally been crossed. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. Missiles are in the air. Nuclear facilities are primary targets. Donald Trump, who once declared he would finish certain wars, is he now ending conflicts or igniting the largest regional fire in modern history? Diplomacy tables have been overturned, embassies evacuated. It is time to talk about the real picture, the dark plans that lie beyond the maps. What we are witnessing is not merely a massive military operation limited to destroying a few buildings. The surgical strikes on strategic centers such as Tehran, Isfahan, and Shiraz are actually the opening moves in a long-planned chess game aimed at regime change. From a technical standpoint, bunker-busting bombs have penetrated deep into Iran's nuclear infrastructure. According to IAEA reports, the Natanz fuel enrichment plant, FEP, and pilot fuel enrichment plant, PFEP, were operating around 20,000 centrifuges enriching uranium before the strikes. Large sections of these facilities are now heavily damaged or destroyed. Fordow's deeply buried enrichment site, Bushehr nuclear power plant, and other critical nodes have also been hit. The World Nuclear Association estimated Iran's nuclear capacity at approximately 915 MW in 2024, that capacity has now been severely crippled. But the real question is not military success, it is what comes after. Iran's retaliation has already struck American bases in Qatar, Al Udeid Air Base, Bahrain, U.S. Fifth Fleet Headquarters, and the UAE. This proves the conflict will not remain bilateral, it is pulling the entire Gulf into a domino effect. The era of proxy wars is over. The main actors are now directly facing each other, guns pointed. Iran is responding not with the desperation of a cornered state, but with the asymmetric warfare doctrine it has meticulously prepared for decades. The true promise for counter-operation has targeted not only Israel but also U.S. military assets across the region. Iran's message is brutally clear: if I go down, I take the whole neighborhood with me. The mining of the Strait of Hormuz and the halt of tanker traffic represent Iran's most powerful economic nuclear weapon. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA, roughly 20% of global oil trade, about 20 million barrels per day in 2024, passes through Hormuz. Blocking it is an existential threat to the world economy. The economic fallout is already hitting hard. Brent crude jumped to $72.87 per barrel on February 27, trading economics data, up 2.87% in a single day and 8.16% over the month. Analysts warn that full closure of Hormuz could push oil prices toward $150 per barrel. That is not just higher gasoline prices, it means 1.5% global economic contraction, broken supply chains, runaway inflation, and severe hardship for ordinary households worldwide. Remember 1979? After the Iranian Revolution, oil prices doubled and triggered a global recession. We are heading toward a similar, or worse, shock. The human cost is heartbreaking. Official figures report 201 civilian deaths and hundreds injured in the first 24 hours alone. The real number is almost certainly higher. The United Nations Security Council resolutions have become meaningless pieces of paper. International law is suspended. If this operation does not quickly result in regime change, Iran, a nation of 92 million people, risks becoming a failed state. That scenario would produce millions of refugees, spawn new radical groups, and lock the region in decades of chaos and instability. Trump's call for Iranians to take your destiny into your own hands echoes in the streets, but the opposition remains unarmed, disorganized, and leaderless. History has taught us that democracy cannot be bombed into existence. Iraq and Afghanistan are painful reminders. What we risk witnessing is not a freedom revolution, but the collapse of a state apparatus that could plunge the country into a Syria-style civil war. In the end, the missiles launched today did not only destroy buildings. They shattered 50 years of regional power balance. The question now staring us in the face is stark: will this operation make the world safer, or has the fuse of the greatest global catastrophe of the century been lit? We stand at one of history's most dangerous turning points, and unfortunately, the brakes no longer work. However, in this scene, it's not just missiles that are speaking. The real war is raging at the nerve endings of the global system. Leaks from Washington suggest that the Pentagon's Epic Fury plan is far more than an air campaign. It is a full-spectrum, hybrid warfare prototype targeting Iran's entire digital and financial infrastructure. Reports indicate that U.S. Cyber Command, Cybercom, has already paralyzed parts of Iran's national power grid and the automation systems at its key oil terminals. This marks a historic first in modern warfare. Not only are physical facilities being struck, but the very digital soul that keeps those facilities alive is being targeted simultaneously. So where do Russia and China stand on this enormous chessboard? Beijing has already issued a statement expressing deep concern. But this concern is not merely diplomatic, it is existential. China sources approximately 15% of its energy needs from Iran, with roughly 1.2 million barrels of Iranian crude flowing directly to Chinese refineries every day. If this flow is permanently disrupted, analysts warn of an inevitable 2% contraction in China's industrial production index. Moscow's position is even more complicated. Russia views the targeting of its main drone supplier, the Shahid production chain, as a direct strategic threat. Intelligence reports suggest that Russian military cargo aircraft may be ferrying signal jammers and advanced air defense systems to covert bases north of Tehran via the Caspian Sea corridor. This raises the chilling possibility that the operation could rapidly escalate into a direct great power confrontation. Then there is the Gulf domino effect. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates currently find themselves walking a razor's edge. On one hand, they quietly welcome the weakening of their historic rival Iran. On the other, they dread becoming victims of Tehran's "if I burn, everyone burns" doctrine. Everyone still remembers the 2019 drone attack on Aramco facilities that briefly knocked out half of Saudi oil production and sent prices soaring 15% overnight. Today the risk is tenfold greater. If Iran redirects its missiles toward Dubai's financial district or Riyadh's oil export terminals, the collapse would not be regional, it would be global. According to a recent note from Goldman Sachs, a full-scale regional war in the Middle East could vaporize $3 trillion in global market value within a single week. Now to the most critical question: will this operation deliver the regime change Trump has promised? The White House is telling the Iranian people to declare your own freedom, but the reality on the ground is far darker. Since the CIA-backed coup of 1953, Iranians have developed a deep-seated genetic reflex against foreign intervention. A population living under falling bombs may despise their repressive regime, but they are unlikely to see incoming missiles as liberation. On the contrary, the external threat narrative could strengthen the hands of the regime's most radical factions, potentially transforming Iran into a full military dictatorship. If the failed state scenario we witnessed in Syria plays out here, with a population of 92 million, the resulting refugee crisis would not only overwhelm the region, it could redraw the borders of Europe itself. The hours are ticking forward, and every new blip on radar screens could herald another catastrophe. Diplomatic sources whisper that a secret de-escalation channel is being quietly established through Switzerland, but sitting down at the table while the barrels are still hot seems impossible. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's latest statement is unequivocal: the operation will continue until all targets are destroyed. Iran, meanwhile, claims it has already evacuated its remaining uranium stockpiles to undisclosed secure locations. In the end, the first missile launched on the morning of March 1, 2026 was not merely the beginning of a military campaign, it was the final nail hammered into the coffin of the world order we once knew. We stand on the threshold of an era where oil valves are shut, digital nervous systems go dark, and diplomacy lies in ruins. If this fire cannot be contained, tomorrow morning we will wake up not only talking about gasoline prices, but about the last remaining fragments of peace slipping through our fingers. History is being written, not with ink, but with the smell of gunpowder. We are all on the same ship, and that ship is now steaming full speed into the greatest storm history has ever recorded. However, in this theater of operations, missiles are not the only voices speaking. The true battlefield is unfolding at the nerve centers of the global system. Leaked intelligence from Washington indicates that the Pentagon has activated a phase codenamed Blind Operation, Core Operation, immediately following the initial strikes. Iran's entire radar and air defense network was blinded by a highly advanced digital virus, widely believed to be a far more sophisticated evolution of Stuxnet. This represents one of the most terrifying faces of modern warfare. A nation can no longer see what is coming from the sky because its digital eyes have been completely gouged out. The surprisingly low performance of Iran's vaunted S-300 systems and its domestically produced Bavar 373 air defense batteries now makes perfect sense. Yet Iran's response is far from limited to ballistic missiles. Tehran has adopted what it calls the horizontal escalation strategy. In plain terms, if you strike my heart, I will strike you from every direction. In line with this doctrine, the Houthis in the Red Sea, Hezbollah along the Mediterranean frontier, and Shia militias in Iraq simultaneously press their triggers. Right now, not only Tehran but Tel Aviv, Erbil, and even energy platforms in the Mediterranean have become potential targets. Of particular alarm to Israel is the risk that Hezbollah's precision-guided missiles could saturate and overwhelm the Iron Dome system. Reports indicate that this possibility has already triggered widespread panic among the Israeli public. Now let us turn to the nightmare scenario that directly touches everyone's wallet. The panic in global oil markets is not merely a game of numbers. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA, the vast majority of oil transiting the Strait of Hormuz flows to Asia's giant economies. China, India, Japan, and South Korea are already reporting that energy costs have surged by as much as 30% in just 1 week due to the Iran-US confrontation. In 2024, China imported approximately 11 million barrels of oil per day. Its energy security now hangs by a thread. Even more critical is the liquefied natural gas, LNG, traffic. Qatar ranks among the world's largest LNG exporters, and virtually all of its cargoes must pass through Hormuz. If the strait is fully mined and transformed into a corridor of death, Europe's risk of running out of natural gas in the middle of winter ceases to be a conspiracy theory, it becomes a mathematical certainty. Goldman Sachs analysts, in their latest update, warned that oil prices exceeding $150 per barrel would trigger an unavoidable global recession, potentially inflicting deeper wounds than the 2008 financial crisis. Behind these cold figures lie shattered lives. The rising plumes of smoke over northern Tehran's residential neighborhoods and industrial zones are burning not only buildings but also the Iranian people's last hopes for the future. From the limited images leaking out via VPN-protected social media inside Iran, one thing is clear: the population is caught in a profound dilemma. On one side stands the deep-seated anger toward the regime that has simmered since the 2022 Mahsa Amini protests. On the other side stands a powerful national reflex against seeing their country trampled under foreign boots or foreign missiles. Trump's message, "We stand with you," is resonating in Tehran streets in precisely the opposite way he intended. History has repeatedly shown that promising freedom to a people while raining bombs upon them usually does nothing more than radicalize them further. If these strikes end up inflaming Iran's nationalist vein, the regime could exploit the external threat to seal its internal fractures. And when that happens, the real catastrophe begins. A wounded, cornered, ultra-aggressive Iran, fully determined to acquire nuclear weapons at any cost. Why, then, are Moscow and Beijing proceeding with such caution? Russia, still deeply entangled in Ukraine, cannot fully commit militarily to Iran's side. Yet intelligence and logistical support channels are operating at full throttle. The Kremlin appears to view this chaos as a golden opportunity to divert U.S. attention and resources away from Ukraine toward the Middle East. China, meanwhile, watches one of the most vital nodes of its Belt and Road Initiative burn while quietly conducting back-channel diplomacy to safeguard its energy security. Should the United States become fully mired in this quagmire, pressure on Taiwan could intensify almost immediately. What the world is witnessing is no longer a single regional war, it is a multi-front contest in which great powers are testing each other's resolve. March 1, 2026, will be recorded in human history as one of its darkest turning points. The missiles launched at 4:12 that morning did not merely destroy facilities in Iran, they demolished the illusion of stability that modern civilization had clung to. Tomorrow we will speak not only of gasoline prices, but of refugee waves, of banking systems collapsing under cyber attacks, of a world order that no longer exists. Diplomacy is currently in intensive care, hooked to life support. If that machine fails, all that will remain is the smell of gunpowder and irreversible destruction. Throughout this analysis, the military reports, economic data, and open-source intelligence we have presented make one thing painfully clear: we are not mere spectators. We are direct participants in this global tremor. Every cent increase in oil prices, every military movement along borders, is reshaping our lives, our economies, and our future. We are all on the same ship, and that ship is now steaming straight into the most violent storm the modern world has ever known.